Now, while we're on the concept of space, I thought it was worthwhile making a general comment on Kant's views. There was prior to Kant, in the late 17th century, there was a major controversy between Newton and Leibniz on the nature of space and time. And both Newton's view and Leibniz's view, in my judgment, have elements of truth in them and also major errors. What Newton's concept of space was, he believed in what he called absolute space. And the error in his view is that he reified space into an independent existence. In other words, space is regarded as a thing in itself that exists independent of the matter and the objects in space. Now that is wrong. The correct aspect of Newton's view, though, is that the concept space is based on facts of the physical world around us. That the basis for the concept of space is external facts of the physical world. So so far as Newton believed that, he was perfectly right. Now contrast that with Leibniz's view on space. Leibniz rejected Newton's idea of reifying space into an independent existence. Leibniz argued correctly that the concept of space pertains to relationships, that space is not a thing in itself independent of objects. It is, in fact, a concept that pertains to relationships among objects. Space is, in effect, in Leibniz's words, the sum of places. And then Leibniz shows how one can derive the concept of place just from relationships among physical objects, which I think is the correct approach to the concept of space. Now, Leibniz's error is that, if you remember from your knowledge of history of philosophy, Leibniz was an idealist. In other words, he believed that the whole universe was made up of consciousness. So, and Leibniz had a very bizarre view in his idealism. In fact, he defined, what actually exists in Leibniz's universe are little atoms of consciousness that he called monads. So everything came down to these little atomic consciousnesses, which ultimately the concept of space reduced to. So in Leibniz's view, space, like everything else, is subjective and mental. So now, given that we have these two views that both contain an element of truth and also a major error, what do you think Kant does when he comes along? Absolutely. He purges every element of truth and takes the two errors, the one from Newton and the one from Leibniz, and combines them, and that gives him his view of space. So, of course, on Kant's view, everything is subjective and mental. The entire phenomenal world we create in our minds. So Kant is an idealist in that respect. So he takes that error from Leibniz and combines it with Newton's reification of space into something apart from objects. Because in Kant's view, space and time are created by a separate mental faculty, apart from the categories that supposedly create bodily objects. So he talks about space and time in the same way that Newton does, as if they were things apart from objects. So he manages to take the worst possible position, which probably doesn't surprise you too much. We'll see another example of this later in the course.